Thanks, Gwen. It's great to be here today. Just a comment on Chris's presentation, arguably one of the best discoveries in the last couple of years, and I think, as he mentioned, in the wrong rocks, right? You know, you're not supposed to find it. Well, Bluestone, Fireweed, Zinc, Northern Empire, all part of the same group. Assets that effectively have been cast off, forgotten about, doesn't fit, and that's what we're going to talk about here over the next 10 minutes. So the obligatory cautionary statements. You can see here the corporate structure. I think probably the key thing to take away here, this company is one that's really only been in its current formation for about 15 months. You can see in that period of time, we've now got 6 brokers covering us. There'll be another one I think we'll see next month. And it really kind of is a testament to the quality of the asset and what we were able to pick up, which I'm going to talk about in just a moment. You can also see here that we've had the support of some of the most well-known investors in the space. The Lundin family is a 36% holder, CD Capital out of London with 17%, and when you add management and Goldcorp, about 65% of the stock sits in 4 separate hands. Cerro Blanco. This is an asset that's one of the highest grade undeveloped gold projects in the world today. It has had more than $230 million invested in it by Goldcorp, and prior to that, Glamis. It is permitted for a high-grade undeveloped or high-grade project, and you can see there the resource is 1.2 million ounces and measured and indicated at 10 grams, another 350,000 ounces of inferred. The PEA, which was done last year, just over 15 months ago, as part of the initial capital raising, which we did, the $80 million where the Lundin family came in, demonstrated that it would produce gold around $500 US an ounce and pay itself back after 2 years. And on top of that, of the 230 million, about 60 million of that went into a geothermal project just to the eastern part of this project, in the southeastern part of Guatemala. And we bought this for $18 million. So again, project doesn't fit, cast off. I was once told that if you're following the herd and in the dust, you're too late. And we think we're at the front of the herd here. So this is a 60-second video that's going to talk a little bit about Guatemala, if you haven't been there. This is a very actually modern city. You can see Guatemala City, about 3 million people in a country of 16 million. It has had one of the most stable currencies in Latin America in the last 10 years. It has been growing at 2 to 4% per annum. About 40% of the exports out of this country end up in the United States. And as you can see, when I first went there 18 months ago, despite having traveled throughout the Americas, more than 80 or 90 countries around the world, it wasn't what I expected. It's a very modern country, and 3 hours down the Pan American Highway, you end up at a little town called Ascension Mita. This town here is about 8 kilometers from the project, and you can see that 6 o'clock in the morning, that's the morning commute out to the project. And as you arrive, that's the deposit and some of the all the infrastructure that, in fact, we've picked up that Goldcorp and Glamis had invested here. You can see water treatment plant. We've got 3.5 kilometers of underground development, workshops, mine dries, explosive magazines. Effectively, this is a project that Goldcorp had intended to develop in Guatemala to complement the Marlin mine, which had operated for 12 years, producing 250,000 ounces at first quartile costs. Unfortunately, the Marlin mine wasn't successful in adding more mine life, and it was going into closure. And it was a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, when they decided they were going to really exit Guatemala, because this project will produce 100 to 150,000 ounces of gold. Not big enough for Goldcorp, not really a focus for them. And for Mighty Mouse Bluestone, this is exactly a perfect sort of position for us to focus on and bring this into development and ultimately into production. You can see some of the infrastructure in this video here, the water treatment plant. There's a shot at some geothermal work that we were doing to the east of the project earlier this year. We brought some experts in out of California to help test this. Guatemala has one of the more advanced electrical grids and trading systems actually in the Americas. And this project is permitted to produce 50 megawatts over 50 years. Again, effectively a throw-in. So when we look at the project itself, the PEA, which was done last year to raise that $80 million, where CD and the Lundin family came in, demonstrated 100 to 150,000 ounces of gold production over a relatively shorter mine life, 8 to 9 years, but highly profitable, as you can see. And this is something that, of course, is very important. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to pay the bills. My previous experience, spending more than a decade with Oceana Gold, that was where we were focused on assets that would pay the bills. It didn't matter what the gold or the copper price was. We were focused on assets that could pay the bills. And this is exactly what this represents here. It's a great platform for a company such as ourselves to build on. And Mother Nature's not making too many more 10-gram deposits. You can say good returns, and we're very much focused right now on completing the feasibility study, which we expect to be completed by the end of this year. There's the updated resource. We've been very focused with the marketplace to ensure that we were managing expectations. We felt that we could maintain that resource at 1.2 million ounces as we went and did a lot of structural as well as infill drilling work over the last 8 to 9 months. We were successful in not only doing that, but adding another 20%. And you can see that inferred resource over the next 12 months as we start to focus on infill drilling that. That'll be quite complementary to the overall mine plan. Those are our miners in the underground. You can see that's part of the infrastructure that came with this asset. Really phenomenal. There's $40 to $50 million worth of underground development there. And again, as part of a $200+ million investment, we picked up for $18 million. That high-grade resource actually sits within a broader sort of bulk tonnage resource, which we've also updated. You can see in the M&I category more than 3 million ounces, or just under 3 million ounces. And then when you add the inferred in, another 580,000 ounces. So this is a very well-endowed area, highly prospective, low sulfidation epithermal. We announced the metallurgical test work on the feasibility study here a couple of weeks ago, and great recoveries, 96% by adding some pre-oxidation into the circuit with reduced resonance time on the leaching. So this is as straightforward as it gets when it comes from metallurgy, and from that perspective as well, when you see the endowment, a lot of potential for us to continue to add mine life. This is a good shot here. You can see the yellow ellipse. That's effectively where the deposit sits, along with the underground development that's underlain there. Those little blue boxes around the perimeter, those are some of the drilling that Goldcorp had done historically over the last decade, where you can pick up an ounce or 2 ounces, but that's actually outside the main deposit, and so there's plenty for us to follow up on. And no doubt, as we continue to move this forward and get it financed to develop, by the middle of next year, it'll be plenty to keep our geologists busy on. In fact, when we arrived last year, there hadn't been a geologist on site for almost 5 years. I talked about the geothermal. This is something that's quite unique, to be honest. We didn't really know a whole lot about it when we picked it up. But nonetheless, the phone started ringing, and there were a lot of very interested parties around this. It's not very often you find a geothermal project that's permitted for 50 years for 50 megawatts. That's had $60 million invested in it, and has really been, kind of somewhat forgotten about, except for those in the geothermal industry. So we've done a fair bit of work here, kind of doing some initial test work. We think there's quite a few good synergies between this and the mine, and the possibility of producing some or maybe all of the power that this project needs at very low prices. Typically, you're producing power at 1.5 to 2 cents a kilowatt hour. So as you see, oil prices go up, of course, that becomes even more important for us. We'll be pulling power off the grid at 8 to 10 cents a kilowatt hour, so low price power environment, but nonetheless a unique opportunity here for additional value for stakeholders. And as we close out here, you can see this project stacks up pretty well. I think that the entire management team is very excited about the prospectivity here. As I said, 10 grams per ton in the resource. Mother Nature's not making too many more of these. And on top of that, this is a permitted project that is a mine, effectively, as you saw from the photos earlier. We were just down there 2 weeks ago with the board, and there's a lot of activity that's going on. And as we complete this feasibility study and get it financed, we're very excited about bringing this into development. So in summary, this is a permitted project. In today's world, often you can complete feasibility studies and still wait 3 or 4 years to get the permitting in place. Ours is permitted for exploitation, and so we're on the fast track there. In addition, as I said, it's high grade. There's a lot of opportunities to get in now with the geology team. We've actually somewhat surprised ourselves over the last 10 months with a focus on merely infill drilling, but in fact growing the high-grade resource by more than 20% and the bulk tonnage resource by 40%. It really indicates the prospectivity here. The feasibility study, we're right in the midst of it, and we expect to be completing that towards the end of this year. And as I said, we're backed by some of the most successful and astute investors in the resource space who continue to support us as we move forward. And of course, any CEO worth his salt always reminds you that we're good value and we're cheap at the moment. So there you go. Thank you very much.